clogged in rust, or even if there was no sink at all. If the mosquito net was ripped and the cloaca full, it was the same to Julian. The deeds that drew him were the darkest that we know, and he'd pursued them with the urgency of a lover. From his first trip abroad, I'd had little doubt that he would remain an expatriate all his life, which made it all the stranger that, in the end, that terrible, lonely end, he had died at home. Now my thought, growing more insistent by the hour, was how I might have saved him. "He was wizened," his sister Loretta said to me. "If you can say that about a man who was only in his 50s. She took a sip from her drink. "It's hard to imagine that he's gone." We sat at a small square table in a quiet corner of what was still called an actor's bar, though now it catered mostly to Broadway tourists. I presumed that Loretta had chosen it because it returned her to the days when she'd struggled to be an actress, trudged that dreary path from audition to audition until rejection's blade had whittled away the last of that youthful hope. I'd seen her in 2 productions, both pretty far off Broadway. In the first, she'd played the object of desire in A View from the Bridge. In the second, the title role in Hedda Gabler. In both cases, her talent had impressed me, especially the uneasy balance of pathos and simmering violence she'd brought to Hedda, which had also frightened me a little. She'd had every right to succeed on the stage, but hadn't. Watching her now, I decided that there was perhaps no ash quite so cold as the one left by an unrealized ambition, particularly an artistic one. But then I thought, there is no such thing as a truly fulfilled ambition, is there? At 23, Alexander the Great had bemoaned the fact that there were no more worlds for him to conquer. It seemed to me that we were all like poor, thwarted Alexander, unsatisfied in one way or another. Some were dissatisfied with their choice of careers, others with their choice of mates, still others with their lack of money. My chief dissatisfactions were childlessness and widowhood, to which had now been added my failure to save my one true friend. "Some people, when they die, bring more than themselves to an end," Loretta said. "The books I copy-edit now are mostly happy talk, tips on how to avoid thinking about the only things Julian ever thought about." She shook her head. "Half the time, I feel like a whore." Her smile carried the dogged effort of a lost cause. "Have you seen the new rewrite of The Great Gatsby for teen readers? It's 67 pages long, and it seems that Fitzgerald intended the book to have a happy ending." She was in her early 50s now, but her eyes were as sparkling as they'd ever been. In Egypt, Flaubert had encountered a woman whose exquisite beauty was marred only by that one bad incisor. I could find no such flaw in Loretta. She wore the beauty of her maturity as she had worn the beauty of her youth, easily, almost unconsciously, and with breathtaking grace. Time would do what time always does, but there would be no Botox in Loretta's future, no facelifts. She would move through the remaining seasons of her life as easily as she moved through the stages of a single day. "Julian was an artist," Loretta said firmly. An artist, yes, but with a curious obsession. I thought of how he'd spent his last 6 years following the Russian serial killer Andrei Chikatilo's path through countless dismal towns, sleeping in the same railway stations, eating black bread and cheese, eyeing the vagabond children who had been Chikatilo's prey, becoming him, as Julian always seemed to do while writing about such villains. "The last book really took it out of him," Loretta added. "But it wasn't just exhaustion." "What was it?" She thought a moment, then said, "He was like a man in a locked room, trying to get out." Perhaps, but even so, Julian's mood hadn't troubled me, because I'd always thought that studying atrocities and detailing the outrages of serial killers would be a labor he would at some point seek to escape. Perhaps at last he was breaking free of all that, for there were times, such as when he described a sunset on the Atlas Mountains or a rainstorm in the Carpathians.